It was a quiet evening in a small village surrounded by mountains. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft orange and pink hues. A boy named Ravi sat on the steps of his tiny house, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside was his last meal, 2 pieces of flatbread and a handful of rice. His family had been struggling to find food for days, and this meal was all they had left. Ravi was just 12 years old, but he had seen more hardship than most. His father had passed away a year ago, and his mother worked tirelessly in the fields, yet their harvest had been poor. That evening, as Ravi prepared to eat, he heard a faint voice calling from the dusty road outside. He looked up and saw an old man, frail and hunched over, leaning on a wooden stick. His clothes were torn, and his face showed the exhaustion of someone who had walked miles without food or water. The old man's eyes met Ravi's, and he said softly, "Young boy, I haven't eaten in 3 days. Do you have anything to spare?" Ravi hesitated. He glanced at his bundle, knowing it was all he had. If he gave it away, there would be nothing for him or his mother. But as he looked at the old man's trembling hands and hollow cheeks, Ravi felt a pang of compassion. Without saying a word, he unwrapped the cloth, took 1 piece of flatbread and half the rice, and offered it to the man. The old man's eyes filled with tears as he accepted the food. "May your kindness be returned 1,000 times, young one," he whispered. Ravi simply nodded and watched as the man slowly ate, savoring each bite. When the man finished, he blessed Ravi again and continued down the road, disappearing into the twilight. That night, Ravi's mother noticed the smaller portion of food and asked him why he had eaten so little. Ravi told her about the old man, and although she was worried, she smiled softly. "You have a kind heart, Ravi. Kindness always finds its way back," she said. The next morning, something extraordinary happened. A group of strangers arrived in the village. They were from a nearby town and had heard about the village's struggles. They brought carts loaded with food, seeds, and supplies. The villagers were overjoyed, but no one knew why the help had come so suddenly. As the group distributed food, their leader approached Ravi's house. It was the old man from the previous evening, but he looked different. He stood tall, his clothes clean and bright, his face full of life. Ravi's eyes widened in disbelief. The old man smiled and said, "You gave me food when you had almost nothing. Your kindness touched my heart, and I wanted to repay you and your village." He explained that he was a wealthy merchant traveling to find people in need. Ravi's simple act of sharing had inspired him to help not just Ravi, but the entire community. Word spread quickly, and the villagers couldn't believe Ravi's generosity had brought such a blessing. Families that had been on the verge of starvation now had enough to eat. The seeds the merchant provided allowed the villagers to plant new crops, and soon the fields were green again. Ravi became a symbol of kindness in the village. People would tell his story to remind others that even the smallest act of compassion can create ripples of change. The village thrived, and Ravi grew up learning that kindness is a strength, not a weakness. His decision to share his last meal didn't just save an old man, it saved an entire village. And so the lesson remained: when you give from the heart, the world has a way of giving back, often in ways you could never imagine.